So, first of all, what was your pathway into rugby, and did you always dream of playing for the Red Roses?
So my pathway into rugby really was my family. So I was playing at a time that was quite unusual really for girls to play rugby. Started in the late 80s and into the 90s. But I played because my dad played rugby. I had an older brother who played rugby, but perhaps more significantly, I've got a twin brother. And so we played mini rugby together at my local club in Folkestone, and kind of that where it started. I had no idea that an England women's team existed. It wasn't on the TV. I loved watching rugby. I supported Bath men, supported England men, but I really had no idea that there was an England women's team. So actually, really, my dream then was just to play.
So, like moving on to playing for the England women's team, how proud were you when it comes to captaining the team?
So all through my England career, if you like, there was kind of like different steps and different stages. And to start with, it was just building my confidence as a player. When I first got into the team, I was still playing for my local club in Folkestone. I wasn't playing for a premiership. So it felt like a really, really big thing. And then after a couple of years, confidence grew. I was like, I was getting selected and I was starting to feel like a bit of a leader quietly. And then when I got selected as captain, it felt a little bit unreal at the time. But looking back on my England career, probably the captaincy was the thing that I was most proud of, and it was tough. I just enjoyed it so much and got so much out of the captaincy.
So, like you said, you were captain of the team. You've won multiple Six Nations. So, what would you say was like the greatest game that you can remember throughout your career?
In my England career, there were so many highlights. I was playing at such a good time. We had a great team, we had a great setup. Things were developing all the time. Things were starting to become more kind of professional with a little p, and we weren't paid. It was such a great time to be involved. There were some really significant games. I remember a game against France away in 2006 in the Six Nations. We'd lost to them in 2004, lost them in 2005. We went and beat them on home soil, and that felt like a real shift for us as an England team. And I remember a period about 20 minutes we were just defending on our line, close quarters, and it was just such a phenomenal feeling. And like as a forward, being right in the middle, I loved that. And beating France then was brilliant. I never lost to France again. So that was kind of a big game for us. Another one, a massive game for the team, and I guess for me individually was in 2009 when we beat New Zealand at Twickenham. It was my 50th cap, so it was really nice kind of timing for that. And I scored the only try and got player of the game. Don't want to show off about that, but it was a massive moment. New Zealand, the Black Ferns, hadn't lost a game since 2001. We were building into the World Cup, and it was a huge win. It kind of taught us that perhaps they weren't as invincible as we all thought they were. So that was a great day.
Obviously, you played in two World Cups, but lost in the final on both occasions. How hard was it like for you to bounce back from them two defeats?
So I played lucky enough, I suppose, to play in two World Cup finals in 2006 as a member of the team, and then in 2010 as captain. I remember feeling quite different after each of those losses. In 2006, we lost to New Zealand over in Canada, and we could have won, but they were phenomenal. They were the best team. I remember thinking I've never had to work so hard in every single breakdown and every single bit of contact than I did in that game. And they were absolutely deserved winners. We could have won, but we didn't. And after that game, I was disappointed. Of course, I was. But I just remember feeling absolute huge motivation for the next 4 years to go and put it right in 2010. In 2010, I was captain. We went in, we'd beaten New Zealand the year before. We were really confident, we were in a really good place. We went into the World Cup knowing we were going to win, and that was the only option. And then we didn't. And it was devastating. And I had that feeling as a player, as kind of being part of that team that had lost when we were really, really, really going to win. And also a different layer of emotion as captain, thinking, could I have made different decisions? What should I have done? And if I'm really honest, I've never got over that, and I never will. I've never watched a game. I don't want to. And I found that really, really difficult. And it's only really recently, with the current Red Roses, I've actually really enjoyed watching them win. I found that difficult in the time between. So, yeah, it was hugely, hugely tough. So 2006, I just felt motivated to go on to the next one. 2010, probably unlikely I was going to make another World Cup. And just as captain, I just felt so devastated and more responsible for the loss.
Yeah, and then obviously a year later, you retired from the international team. Like, what were the main factors in
So I retired from England in 2011. This was a year after the World Cup. I knew I didn't want to retire at World Cup time, whatever happened, win or lose. Um, but I went through to 2011 thinking I don't know if I'd make it to the next World Cup. I was in my 30s then, starting to think about other life choices I might make, and I wanted to make my own decision to retire. I didn't want to get deselected. Because someone younger and fitter and faster and more skillful was out there, or that I got injured. I wanted to make that decision myself, and I wanted to make that decision when I was still a good player, and that's what kind of led me. Whether it was the right decision, I don't know. It was a decision I made at the time. When England went on to win the next World Cup in 2014, I found that difficult. I thought, could I have carried on? Could I have been in that squad? Could I have been part of the team that lifted a World Cup trophy? And it's easy to say that you made the decision at the time. But I always think about it. but yeah, for me, the reason for my retiring was to make that decision myself and not have it made for me.
So in the first year or two after retiring, did you struggle with anything like missing being part of that group or missing the feeling of representing your country?
So when I retired from England in 2011, it was a really strange time. You had this period of your life when you know exactly what you're aiming for. You know what your goals are, whether they're kind of in the gym or the way you structure your week, or your World Cup cycles, your Six Nation cycles, or literally just week to week to the next game. You know exactly what you're aiming for. You know what your purpose is in life. I had a job as well, but my main purpose, my main goal was to be the best I could be for that England team. And then when you retire, suddenly that is just stripped away. You fall off the edge of the cliff and it's no longer there. And you've kind of got to reassess your whole life, if you like. What is now your goal? What's your purpose? What do you do? Who are you? And so many emotions to deal with. And actually, for me, when I retired, no one there to help me because the whole support structure was based around you being a player, being an England player. And then when you weren't, it wasn't there. So it was a difficult time, and I felt like going around thinking, I used to do that. I used to do that. Don't forget me. I used to do that. And it was that whole kind of shift in identity and trying to work out who on earth I was very, very difficult.
Like you mentioned a minute ago, obviously in 2014 the England women's team obviously won the World Cup. Um, so did you ever feel like regret that you retired in 2011? And would you say like you ever felt depression from that decision, obviously, with them winning the World Cup?
In 2014, when England women won the World Cup, I was working for Sky, who televised their tournament, and I was in the studio as a pundit. Really enjoyed it, loved media work, and really enjoyed like the pool games, semi-final. And when we got to the final, it was becoming apparent that England were going to win. They beat Canada in the final, and the final whistle went, and in the studio, I just sobbed. I just had these tears streaming down my face, mascara everywhere. The makeup person had to come and patch me up. So lucky we went to an ad break. I just had a huge amount of emotion, and if I'm honest, at that time, most of it was not great emotion. I was kind of devastated that it hadn't happened 4 years ago, devastated that I wasn't out there. I found it really difficult to be kind of happy for the team. And that evening, I remember, I got my car back to where I lived, and I was living on my own at the time. And I went in and I sat down, and I didn't even put the lights on. I sat in the dark, knowing that some of my best mates were over in France having the best night of their lives because they just won the World Cup. And in that moment, I just felt very alone, very kind of quite sad, really, but struggling with those emotions and experiencing that and feeling a little bit guilty about that I wasn't happy and elated for the team.
And moving on to your life after rugby, you launched the agency called Inspiring Women. So can you tell us a bit more about what that is and like what your aims were when being a creator?
So after rugby, I worked for the RFU for a little bit, developing women and girls rugby, which I enjoyed, and I was passionate about that. But I also wanted to do something sort of different. So I walked away from that, walked away from a secure job, and I set up a speaker agency called Inspiring Women, where I had female speakers from sport and adventure backgrounds going to corporate schools, charities, and sharing their stories. For me at the time, the reason I set it up was I was lucky. I was going to lots of events. So I really enjoyed them. But event after event after event, the speaker was male, 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 and great speakers. But I was like, there should be more women out there because there's women with just such incredible stories. And so that's why I set up Inspiring Women. I'm really, really proud of that, and it's something that I still feel strongly about and still feel passionately about. And I think there's still a need for it. Us women sometimes are a bit self-effacing, and we're kind of like, yeah, actually, we should tell our story. It's really, really important for young girls and young boys to kind of listen to that and think that, yeah, I can do that too.
And in 2020, you released a book about your career. So, what made you release that book?
So after I retired, it was it was a difficult challenge. One of the most difficult challenge of my England career was retiring. Um, and then, also kind of coupled with that this feeling that we have value, and like we should be having our stories out there. And at the time, there were no biographies, memoirs out there about female rugby players. And so I thought I'd do something about that. And I wrote my own book. I wrote every word of it myself, and it was actually kind of therapy, just a lot cheaper. I really enjoyed the process of writing, and it really helped me kind of look on some of the challenges and experiences and difficulties and emotions I had about retirement, as well as kind of portraying myself as this kind of navigating life as also a human being, woman, girl, wanting to find love or whatever it was. And I was so proud of the book. I love that I wrote it. I enjoy writing anyway, and seeing it on the shelves in bookstores has been one of the proudest moments of my life.
And finally, what advice would you give to athletes who are just about to or just retired from professional or competitive sport?
Advice to people that are just about to retire or coming up to retiring, or actually just starting out on their sports career. If they're lucky enough to be paid, perhaps, or actually, they're doing it around side a job, but that's their most important thing. It's like always kind of think of something else. Surround yourself with other people. Value your network, value your connections that you make through your sport, because they could be hugely important to you in the future. And do other stuff as well. There's research out there to suggest that performance is better when you've got other stuff going on in your life as well. So whether it's rugby, whether it's football, whether it's swimming, whatever it is, make sure there's other stuff in your life. Go and learn, go and think about other careers. And actually, the fear, well, not the fear, but the risk is always there of injury, or actually might wake up one day and think you don't want to do it anymore. So I guess kind of preparing for your future and kind of being really objective about it. And you can't actually play sport forever. What else are you going to do, whether it's linked to your sport or or completely separate? But yeah, for me, I think one of the big things was valuing the connections that I made. That was really, really important for me in life after sport.
Right, perfect. That's
All right, cool.